What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Back with yet another schedule preview and record prediction video. And today we're going to be doing the 2020 Indiana Hoosiers. So Indiana was a team that I thought was overlooked last year. They were in some pretty close games against some pretty good competition. I'll tell you more about that here in a little bit. Overall, they just had a terrific season last year. I think better than a lot of people expected them to. They're losing guys, most notably Peyton Ramsey, the quarterback. He has transferred to Northwestern, and that means that Michael Penix is going to start for Indiana. He's going to be the full-time quarterback. There's no question about that. He's got some good weapons at wide receiver, such as Whop Phillier. He is coming back, the best wide receiver for Indiana last year. Overall, I believe that Indiana's defense could improve a little bit, but overall, I expect Indiana to be a very solid football team. So we're going to see if Indiana can take down some of the top teams in the Big Ten, or if Indiana is going to drop off from what they did last year. All right, here's the schedule for the Indiana Hoosiers. When you looked on there, their 2019 record was 8-5. They were in some pretty good games. They played Penn State really well. Probably could have won that game. Their draw from the West was not as hard as it was, or as it's going to be this year. They went on the road and beat Nebraska, and on the road and beat Maryland. And then they went on the road and beat Purdue. So all three of their games from the West, they went on the road and they won all three of them. The game against Purdue, it's a great one to watch in double overtime. Then, and I believe it was the Tax Slayer or the Gator Bowl, one of those two, Indiana had a lead against Tennessee and then just blew it. Tennessee ended up winning that one 23-22. You'll look up there, their home games are going to be in red and their away games are going to be in that light gray with the gray, or excuse me, with the red background. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at Indiana's schedule. Start off, it's going to be a Friday game, a road game against the Wisconsin Badgers in week 1. No, I did Wisconsin a while back, and I said in this game, I just see Wisconsin being able to overpower Indiana in this game. This Wisconsin defense is going to be one of the better ones in the Big Ten, in my opinion, and I expect Wisconsin to easily be able to handle Indiana here. I just think the crowd noise is going to be too much. That defense is going to be fired up, and maybe Indiana's defense can stop Wisconsin on a couple possessions, but overall, I just expect Wisconsin to be able to control this game for pretty much every single quarter. That's a home game against Western Kentucky. So as I talked about yesterday when I did Louisville, who also has to play Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is a team that always goes like 7-5, 8-4. Maybe if they're better, 9-3, 10-2, but they always usually make a bowl game, and they're always a pretty solid team, but I don't expect that to change this year, and I don't expect them to be able to compete with the talent that Indiana has, like the Hoosiers, easily in this one. Then a game against Ball State. This one should also be easy for Indiana. Not a lot of talent out there for Ball State, and the Hoosiers should take care of the Cardinals easily. Then a road game against UConn. So UConn is no longer a part of the American Athletic Conference. They are now an FBS independent. They left to go play in the Big East in sports like basketball and baseball and other sports like that. So now a part of the Big East. So considered an FBS independent team. They were not very good last year. I don't expect that to change this year. Not being in the conference definitely does not help them. I see Indiana being able to easily win this game. Then you get your bye week, and there is so many other better spots for a bye week. I mean, just look at their games after that. They got to play 3 of the bottom teams in the Big Ten after their bye week. There's definitely tougher stretches in which you'd like to have your bye week. You'd like to have it in the second half of your season. This is a bad spot for a bye week, in my opinion. So after that, they get to play Maryland. So Maryland has picked up quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who is the brother of Tua Tagovailoa, who, of course, is now a member of the Miami Dolphins. Now, Tua not as good as Tua, but definitely going to be able to make an impact at Maryland. I feel like Maryland's offense is going to be better next year because of Tua, but their defense I just don't see being that great for Maryland. It's a home game for Indiana. It could be a fun one to watch, maybe if Maryland's defense improves more than I think it's going to, but overall, I see Indiana being able to easily handle this one. That's a road game against Rutgers. So Rutgers is getting Greg Schiano back at head coach, and the reason I say back is because a couple years ago when Rutgers was still a part of the Big East, Greg Schiano was their head coach, and they were making bowl games with Greg Schiano. Now Greg Schiano has been a defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and he can take what he learned with the Buckeyes and apply it to the Scarlet Knights. I think we got to give him a couple years before we can expect Rutgers to be in the middle ground of the Big Ten and really be able to compete with some of the top dogs. But I think Greg Schiano definitely is going to improve this program. Maybe could get their first win in the Big Ten in a long time, but it will not be this game. I think Indiana is going to be able to beat Rutgers. Then a home game against Michigan State. So Michigan State, of course, is losing their head coach, Mark D'Antonio. He stepped down, so Mel Tucker is going to come in to replace Mark D'Antonio. And he was an old Colorado head coach. I think we got to give Mel Tucker a couple years. We got to see how he recruits and just how Michigan State overall flows through Mel Tucker. I think he could elevate Michigan State back up to the level that they were at when Mark D'Antonio was in his prime. But for right now, we got to give him some time. Michigan State's going to have a down year, and I expect Indiana to be able to beat the Spartans. Then a home game against Penn State. So like I said, when we looked at their record from last year, Indiana played Penn State really, really well on the road in Happy Valley. And this year, I think Penn State should watch out for Indiana. Indiana's going to be a team that's going to improve this year. They're returning a lot of production on both sides of the ball. And if Indiana's defense has most things figured out by this point, which I believe that they will, their defense may be able to shut down what Sean Clifford and everyone's going to do. They get the game at home, so it's a big advantage for Indiana. Overall, I do think Penn State is the way more talented team than Indiana, and I'm going to favor the Nittany Lions. But I would not be surprised if Indiana made this a very, very close game. I think this game could come right down to the wire, and it's going to be closer than a lot of people think. Then a road game against Ohio State, and this one's going to be really hard for Indiana. Indiana, I just don't see how they could beat Ohio State on the road. I mean, Ohio State's got so much talent coming in this year. The returning quarterback, Justin Fields, Chris Olave is coming back. That defense is probably going to be one of the better ones in the Big Ten as well. Maybe if this game was at home, I would give Indiana more of a shot. And maybe Indiana could play with Ohio State for maybe half a quarter, but just way too much talent on the Buckeye side. I don't see Indiana being able to win this one. But a home game against Illinois. This one could be a fun matchup to watch. Illinois is a team that is getting better. Lovie Smith is elevating this program higher and higher year after year. And they made a bowl game last year, which Illinois fans were not used to for a long time. And I believe Illinois could make a bowl game again this year. This game could be fairly interesting because I feel like Illinois has the pieces in place to be able to compete with Indiana. Overall, Indiana is the more talented team to me. I think it's going to come down to the quarterback battle in this game, whether that be Michael Penix or Brandon Peters, whichever one I think plays better. Their team has a higher shot of winning this football game. I'm going to slightly lean towards the Indiana Hoosiers just because I feel like Indiana's got more offensive pieces in place and their defense is probably almost complete up to this point. So I'm going to give this one to Indiana. Then it's a road game against Michigan, and this one could be a fun one to watch. I mean, I expect Michigan to have a down year this year. They're just losing so much and not really bringing in – well, they're bringing in a really good recruiting class, but I don't see Michigan being able just to compete with the talent that's going to be in the Big Ten this year. This one could be a fun one to watch. I mean, I'm going to lean towards the Wolverines in this one just because it's a home game for Michigan, and I believe Michigan's got pretty much everything figured out by this point. But it could be a tricky game for Michigan because they could be looking ahead to the game next week in the Horseshoe against Ohio State. So Indiana has a shot to nab a game here against Michigan, and they're not going to be looking ahead to Purdue. So Indiana could steal one here, but I'm going to favor the Wolverines because I just think Jim Harbaugh is going to be able to get it done. Then their final game of the season, and this is for the bucket, home game against Purdue. Now, I believe that Purdue could be a tricky team this year. Purdue's got some really good talent. Jack Plummer's coming back. And if you have forgotten about Rondale Moore, well, I'm here to remind you about him because Rondale Moore is one of the most explosive players in all of college football, and he is coming back for the Boilermakers. He's going to be a huge difference maker. This game is going to be incredible to watch. It's really hard to predict this game because I feel like Purdue is more equipped to win this game, but at the same time, it's a home game for Indiana, and I feel like Indiana's got everything figured out by this point. So it really is up in the air for me. I personally am going to slightly lean towards Indiana just because it is a home game, and I feel like Indiana is overall the more talented team on the defensive side, which I feel like is going to be a big part in this game. I would not be surprised if Purdue ends up winning this game, but it is going to be very close in my opinion. All right, so now with everything being said and considered for the Indiana Hoosiers, I have them going 8-4. And I feel like 8-4 is pretty good for the schedule that they have to endure this season. On the road at Wisconsin, going to be a hard one to start off with, and I don't think they can win that one. On the road at Ohio State, it's going to be another hard one. Penn State, maybe Indiana could pull off an upset, but I see them losing that one. And then their fourth loss going to be to Michigan. But like I said, maybe Indiana loses to Purdue and gets one at Michigan if Michigan looks ahead. But 8-4 is where I have Indiana right now. Now let's move on to their record range. And what this is, I think this team's worst case scenario along with their best case scenario. Worst case scenario I have for the Indiana Hoosiers is 6-6. There's just not a lot of tricky games in the non-conference. Indiana's non-conference is, in my opinion, one of the easier ones in all of FBS this year. They have to play Western Kentucky, who's okay, but then Ball State and UConn aren't really all that great, and their non-conference isn't that good. So that should be 3 automatic wins for them. But if Michael Penix can just not play like Peyton Ramsey did, and especially not get guys like Watt Fillier involved, who is really, really good, and Indiana's defense doesn't improve at all. 6-6 is where I see Indiana, and overall it'd be a drop-off from where they were last year, which I don't think a lot of people expect from this Indiana team. This is a team that ESPN has rated really high if in their ESPN Football Power Index, which I don't really rely on, but it's just a neat thing to look at. But 6-6 is a worst-case scenario for Indiana. Again, if they just cannot seem to figure things out. They got a lot of tricky games on the road, like Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, and I could see them losing games like Purdue and Illinois as well. Now let's move on to their best-case scenario, and for me and for Indiana, it's 10-2, which might surprise a lot of you because they have to play 4 of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten, with Wisconsin, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. But as I said, I don't think they're going to be able to beat Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to be able to beat Ohio State. But maybe they could pull off an upset against Penn State. I could really see that happening. And then maybe they can steal one on the road against a Michigan team that's going to be down this year if Michigan ends up looking ahead to Ohio State. Other than that, though, every single game on the schedule is manageable for the Indiana Hoosiers. Maybe even if they pull off a week 1 upset against Wisconsin, I think a lot of people will be shocked there. And this will be an Indiana team that people are going to have to take seriously for real. But my current prediction for the 2020 Indiana Hoosiers is 8-4. That's how it's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the Indiana Hoosiers. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you are brand new to the channel or just enjoy my content. If you haven't done so already, please do leave a comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Indiana Hoosiers. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard, but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.